Hello and welcome back to PA Chocka. My name is Manny and I'm your host. Today we have Lorena. How are we doing?
Hi, nice to meet you, and thank you for the invite. I'm doing very well. What about you?
I'm good. If you just give us a little background on who you are, what you do, and how you got to where you are.
Yeah, so I'm basically a physical performance coach based all over Europe right now, I would say. I was spending the last year in France working with a first women's team there, like Olympique Lyonnais, and I just recently made my transition back to Germany to work with the under 20 women's national team to prepare them for the World Cup. And before that, I was spending more than like a decade in Munich, just working for teams there and also working as a physical performance coach in the private sector. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. And if I'm not working, I just love being outdoors, like hiking up on mountains and yeah, just being active.
As a strength coach, we deal a lot with Excel's, spreadsheets, and building out the best program that we can for our athletes. Although, when you have these large amount of spreadsheets and Excels and printables and packs that you need to hand out to your athletes, it can get a little bit overwhelming, especially with large amount of files. Mine's personally has crashed, deleted, and that to me is a big burden. That's why since starting my own business, I've went with TeamBuildr. TeamBuildr is an all-in-one programming software that has truly changed and leveled up the way I coach and the way I program for my athletes. With TeamBuildr, you can create customizable workouts, track your athletes' progress in real time, and even generate performance reports with just a few clicks. Athletes can also fill out their own workout data by using either the tablet or their smartphones in the weight room, which, most importantly, eliminates the paperwork that we all hate. This also gives your athletes accountability for their program and their progress as they are immersed within it. If you are interested in using TeamBuildr, head over to teambuildr.com and sign up using code PACHOCUP. That's PACHALKUP to start your 30-day free trial. Obviously, you've had quite a decent run with the football sector in Europe. How's that sort of happened for you going from Germany to France and then now back to Germany?
So the move to France was basically more over a recommendation of a dear friend of mine. She thought that I would be good for the job and dropped my name, and that's how I kind of found myself moving to France just shortly after the interview process. And yeah, it's been quite a ride there. Like Lyon is one of the best teams in the world in the women's game with a lot of big history. Of course, a lot of great players, great staff, and yeah, but. Sometimes like France is a yeah it's a very difficult topic to or like country to be in if you're not French and if you don't really speak French properly. So I decided that it might be a good idea to move back to Germany. Like I didn't really have a plan when I decided that, but then the national team came around, and yeah, that's how I found myself there.
Nice. What were some of the differences that you found going from Germany to France in terms of their uptake in strength and conditioning programs?
So I think the level is quite similar in Germany and in France, which I think in both sectors should would need a bit more of a development, since a lot of things are very behind current science, I would say. And yeah, they like in France, they really put a big focus on the conditioning part of it, and they do that very well, I think. Whereas now in Germany, you find the strength sector more building up, in my opinion. So yeah, it's kind of the same, but different in like the little nuances on how you do performance. But then again, also the French league just had a major change. So they went from playing like a regular season where you play every team twice and the one who's at the top is the champion to a kind of a playoff system. So you play every team twice and then you have kind of like a final four with a semifinal and a final, which made the
Mm.
structure of the league a bit different compared to the German one where you still have the old version, let's say. And with Lyon, you where you play Champions League and you tend to progress further in the cup. It's a lot more. So you have to be very strategic about recovery as well, where it's hard in season to actually do a deep like strength and conditioning. So basically working more or less on the maintenance part and then microdose
Hmm.
individually for each player or for positions, etc.
Yeah, with Germany being so like at the forefront of the sports science and sort of strength and conditioning science part of it, how did you sort of integrate some of that into the French program?
I mean, my role in the French program was the gym based one. So I think I brought a lot of
Mhm.
progress there as well with being able to work with the individual's needs as best as I could and just do a bit of a more individualized approach there, especially as Leo had quite an increase in staff numbers. So we could really focus on the individual's needs and then therefore just make a difference within each player.
Yeah. And in terms of like your focuses during the season, you talked about like it was more maintenance than sort of building. Can you sort of go through some of the programs and considerations that you made during that time?
Yeah, so basically, one of the main aspects was how to not fatigue the player because what happened, we played basically every third day for a long time of the season. And then we just had a quick winter break of just 1 week and then like a short build up into the spring part of the season. So there you basically stick to the bare minimum and then do a bit of
Mhm.
an upper body lift, like depending on also the player you're working with, a lower body lift, but some things were a bit trickier as the players weren't used to that approach yet. So you would have fatigued them if you started that. So that was capped to a bare minimum. And once we had a week where we only had like one game or like the games on the weekends, we did a team lift. But then one of my main focus was the development of the youth players, the ones that are in the roster of the first team, but technically or necessarily don't play a lot. How their development could increase. So they were on a different schedule than the rest of the team, which then led to like wide spectrum of possibilities to help them like do a gym program or do an extra conditioning program because they didn't play as much as the others did. And then again, another part was as well the goalkeeper development, where we had individualized
Yeah.
programs for each of our three goalkeepers, depending on how they play, like how long they play. Because with the goalkeepers, you can basically say that a match day based on data is the lowest load a goalkeeper has. But of
Yeah.
course, there's like other parts that play into it because the match day warm up is very intense for a goalkeeper. It's a lot of mental pressure whatsoever, but you have more possibilities to expose them to a lift, to plyometrics, etc. So this is where like the main focus on that laid, and yeah, I think we did a pretty good job with that. The feedback we got from the players and from the data as well showed that the way we did it was like a good way to do it and a good approach to do it as well.
What were you sort of measuring to get the players to be on individualized programs?
So what we did specifically with the goalkeepers, if we want to stick to that example, we did a regular counter movement and squat jump screening at least once a week to just see a progression or decrease there, as well as a fatigue monitor. But then we also worked a lot with wellness questionnaires, and we went from like a level zero basically from what they can do in the basic lifts. So like a deadlift, a squat, and single leg work. As well as some upper body lifts to have the data and the progress there, and then we just keep tracking what they're doing, etc.
Yeah. How does that sort of look like for your periodization when you're having different seasons and different games and how that is impacting their performance over a long period of time?
Yeah, so there we basically went with a structure that we have like one lower body and one upper body lift per week, which then varies. Like not every goalkeeper does it on the same day. Like our third goalkeeper sometimes end up playing with our second team or with a reserve team, whereas our second goalkeeper rarely gets played, but still on the bench, so she's still traveling, etc. So first of all, the schedule looks totally different, and then we just basically have like a regular periodization of that. But then it also kind of depends. I'm sorry, like how
It's
fatigued
okay.
they're getting whatsoever. Because what we were also experiencing was a lot of travel fatigue, um, especially with like all the Champions League travels that we had accumulating over the second half of the season. But basically, do a like a light build up in the periodization program, varying from or like starting off with a double leg lifts and ending up to single leg lifts. So what I'm really a big fan of is actually God, how do you call it in English? I'm sorry, sometimes I'm just really missing the word.
It's okay.
Like contrast training. So you combine like a heavy lift with
Okay.
a plyometrics or with the power output, both for upper body and lower body. And then what we also did was we sat together with our goalkeeper coach to have him on board with what we're specifically or what he wants to specifically work on. Because for my case, like I have not really the biggest idea about goalkeeping, how it looks like on the field. Like I see the movements, of course, but I don't know like how the technique behind it really works. So we kind of try to mimic certain movements to engage that. But yeah, basically it's not. It wasn't really as difficult as it probably sounds like. But with like one or two lifts per week, and then like a slow build up towards like the international breaks, so the FIFA windows, because
Mhm.
luckily two out of our three goalkeepers were already retired, so they just had a bit of more time. And then towards the high phase of the season, so towards April and May, we were just like maintaining.
Yeah, with the sort of schedule changing from like your normal league to Champions League and so on, how does that sort of affect periodization? And we've spoken a lot about this on the podcast, and periodization doesn't really work because there's things that go on throughout the season that knocks that perfect periodization plan out the window. How do you sort of manage that when things go wrong and you're kind of having to adapt the periodization plan?
So I absolutely agree with proper periodization does not work in such a tough season. The good thing is the players are used to that already because they've been so experienced with the same schedule years after years after years. So what you do is you build up in preseason. You try to build the strongest foundation you can in preseason, and then you just maintain and then try to set like certain peaks whenever it fits the schedule to maybe make a jump to the next level there. But you don't really know. You have a kind of an idea of like how it could work. The plan
Mhm.
has to be so adaptable because everything can change within a second. Because just the other variabilities, they're just out of your control. So a plan is good, a periodization is good, but if it's not adaptable, it's not going to work anyway. So yeah,
I agree. I always call it like the practical science of coaching.
yeah,
So, like the science of it, amazing. Like you can get lost in the science, but if we look down like in the methods and results, how many of those variables are controlled, right?
exactly.
And then if you go into the field, you can't control them anymore.
Yeah,
So like players might be sick one day. They might just not turn up. I know it's different at elite level where they have to turn up,
yeah,
but in lower levels you don't have to all the time. And there's things that go on like schedules change, traveling affects it. So I'm always very curious on how coaches adapt their periodization plan to fit the what's happening now.
yeah. And also, I think what you can't forget in elite performance, and I think what a lot of the science sometimes forget is that we're talking about top 2% of players' development when we're talking on that level because the players are so well trained already. So that we're kind of scratching the ceiling. Like, of course, you never know the ceiling until you hit it, but you don't necessarily want to try to hit it in like a time like this. You of course you try to hit it in like preseason, or maybe if you have like an extended um, preseason in the winter break, but you don't try to hit it over like the season, and you just
100%
you
agree.
just try
Yeah,
to do everything in order to help the athlete also feel good about what they're doing, you know, because if they're like
100%.
they're always trying to
I always
push and push and push, like they're always so much pressure on themselves as well. So you don't necessarily need to add up more on that, and then you just
mhm,
try to do what's the best for them and kind of find a like a middle ground.
100%. I always talk about like with elite level athletes, the margin window for improvement if we take a year, is around about 1%. If they get 1% better each year at that level, that is huge.
Yeah.
And then, but like, if we look at it, the 1% doesn't sound that much. But when you're at the top of the top, just getting that little edge is what's going to make someone great every year, or like keep that longevity in their sport.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I mean, we all know that like little graph of like this little curve of when you start or like start exercising and then how you progress over the years, and it's basically getting flatter the longer you work. And we're speaking about athlete that's been on like professional level for a minimum of 10 years. So this is like so flat, and there's like if it's half a centimeter improvement in a counter movement jump, or if it's like a kilo more on a squat or on a bench press or something, that's incredible already, you know, because they're like
Yeah,
on that higher level. They're gonna push
100%.
themselves anyway.
What
Like,
100, like that's the thing is like athletes, it's not like they don't want to get better. Like every athlete wants to get to that next stage, but it's having that consciousness of like the 1% is still a hell of a good improvement over the year. And like what you were mentioning with the counter movement jump, I don't always agree with most tests that are being done just to be done. Like for me, I kind of have to have a reason as to why they're being done. The numbers have to mean something to me before I do a test. So like if they're improving, then we kind of have some data to back up why we're doing that test and why it's working and why that's actually affecting the field portion of it.
yeah, absolutely agree with that. Like, you have to test like to get results, and that's just for the sake of testing. And there's like so many like tests out there that people do, but if it's not transferable, then why wasting the time, in my opinion?
100%. What are some of the tests that you go through on like a daily, weekly, monthly basis for your athletes?
Actually, it was a bit tricky with Leo because we were kind of in that transition period. So I'm not sure if you like heard, but Leo had a new owner and great investor from the US. So it's like she's buying clubs left and right. Like some people would buy cars, but she's actually making a real big different in the women's game, you know, and kind of wants the best for the
Mm,
team she owns. So she's investing a lot of money on like staff as well,
into the program.
and that change, she brought a lot of new staff members in just at the beginning of the season, you know, and they brought in a lot of new change as well. So you kind of had to be really cautious about the steps you want to take, and to not overload the players, you know. So basically we started off with just the like the preseason running testing, you know, like the sprint distance. We did a 1.5 MAS test, and then we started because the thought behind was it tried out with the goalkeepers and then move forward to the whole squad with the counter movement jump and a squat jump. So yeah, that's
Mm.
what I heard is what they're
What
doing now, like on a daily basis. But last year we just did it on a weekly basis, and then we did like the regular testing in the winter break.
mhm. What equipment would you use to test?
We had walls all over.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll use the world. To be fair, they are quite good. I have spoken with Vault quite a bit over their equipment, and I've seen them at some of the conferences. I like it's some really good equipment. I'm always in between like the differences between Vault and Hawken.
Hmm.
Um, it depends what you want as well. It depends what you want with your testing.
Yeah. Yeah, like personally, I don't have experience with Hawken because I think in Europe, Wald is just bigger. And it's easy
Yeah,
because you just pack it up in a bag and then you can fly it wherever, you know? Like we basically took all our preseason testing all the way to Spain, and you just pack it up and it's absolutely fine.
yeah. Although they do have some really good equipment coming out. So you know how Vault have the frame.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Hawken have made one that's like a transportable. It's like a little sensor,
Hmm.
and you can do the same test, but push. You kind of like attach it to the rack and stuff like that. It looks amazing. Like I
Okay.
saw that the other day. I was like, that's
Okay.
good.
That's very interesting. I might
Um,
have to check that out. Yeah.
like to be fair, like for what they want to do and with the sort of space they're in, I think scientifically they're a little bit more accurate than Vault.
Okay.
But Vault has more of the firmware for interpreting the results than Hawken has. yeah, it's a big discussion,
Yeah,
and that's yeah. There's so much equipment in this industry now that's
yeah.
kind of like what do we really measure? And I was speaking to Mike Boyle
Mhm.
yesterday, and he was talking about like I think there's so much stuff scientifically happening right now in this industry that you're kind of just like lost for words on what to actually implement or not.
Yeah.
And it's that when do we strip it back to basics and just like make them lift and coach them how to lift and really try get their performance up that way?
Yeah, exactly. I absolutely agree with that. Like, also, I think for like coaches, you also become overwhelmed with all like everything that's going on around because like sports science is so fast developing right now, I feel, and it's going like so many different directions that I can't even see how the athlete must feel sometimes, because they also, I mean, they see everything on Instagram all the time or on like all the social media, and then you just don't know, like, what am I doing, and you just get like so overwhelmed and you start to question what you're doing with your coach and with the team or whatsoever. So yeah, it's sometimes, I mean, of course technology is good, but like to have a
Mhm.
feeling for your athletes and the ability to coach them and the quality of the feedback you get from them, I think is sometimes more valuable than all the numbers, because
100%. It's also like time consuming. Like if we're running like 50 tests before they even start their session, how much are they actually doing during their session?
exactly. Yeah, and it's sometimes because I mean, of course, data is great because it gives you that like rational side of things that you sometimes need. But I think you can never, especially in team sports or I mean, in any sports, you can't take out the human factor.
Mm,
And I think sometimes like the equipment does that just because it doesn't know how to take it in, which is not a fault at all. But like it matters a lot, it's a factor that matters a lot in like the results that you're getting. So if you don't have a feeling or if you don't know what your athlete is doing there or why they maybe do it and interpret the data, you
mhm.
you won't get far with it. You know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. What are some ways that you sort of bring that human side into your coaching?
I'm actually one for like talking a lot with the people. Like it's the
Mm,
goal is not to be like
get to
best
know them.
buddies with them, obviously, but kind of build a like trust foundation, because only when they like trust you, they are being honest to you. Like they will never tell you everything. Like there's always like a thing that you will
Mm,
never know. But when there's a good foundation of trust, the communication is just better and the feedback is getting better. So basically, I mean, to kind of reflect on how I started coaching, like, I mean, I started working with the academy at Bayern Munich. So we're speaking 14 to 17-year-old kids. Like, if there's no trust, then you won't get far. So,
no
um,
program. Yeah.
like the learning process to get there is it's like for a coach, it's kind of like a long one because you just have to talk a lot. Like you have to talk a lot why you do it and they question it because like I mean kids they don't know like their buddy yet maybe, or they don't know
Mm,
what the perks of that could be. But once you learn that, I think with the academy, and that's what I think also work with the academy is super valuable for everybody. You're it's easier when you work with seniors because you kind of, I mean, you know how to
they
kind of build a
already have
trust with
that.
kids, and
Yeah.
then you just kind of take it to the next step. I mean, but adults ask different questions. Like they question everything you're doing all, as well, but just on a different level. But yeah, it's trust. Like be honest with them, and yeah, build the trust, and then you move forward, and then you go from there.
100%. I started in the general population sector, and for that you have to rely very heavily on your soft skills,
Yeah,
and you have to get to know them. You have to interact them. You have to like, get their pretty much whole life story before even like they want to buy into your program. So I always recommend coaches do something for the general population
yeah,
because you get something different every single day. Like every single day, you're getting presented with a new challenge, a new person, different movement patterns. Like it varies so much. So like for me, that's a really good way to start developing like the human side of what we do.
yeah, absolutely.
But I 100% feel like
Yeah,
with children, they're going to question everything, which then also gives you that chance to rationalize everything that you're doing,
yeah.
which is very important.
Oh yeah, of course.
And then when you get to seniors, It's like, just do what I'm telling you and
Yeah.
just trust me.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, no, I absolutely agree. Like, I worked in the private sector for quite a while as well, with like the general population. And I think also what is super crucial is you actually have to genuinely care, you know, and not just about like
Mhm.
the success this person has or whatever, but you have to genuinely care about the human being you're working with. Because when you fake like the conversation
Yeah,
part, and when you fake the trust relationship you want to build on, it's a basis that's gonna crumble anyway. So yeah, just like being like honest, you know. And I mean,
100% agree. And
some of them will like it, some of them don't, but it'll get you somewhere at least.
yeah, and it's always good to have like that experience because like it does, because of how much you're facing every single day. You then when you get to athletes, if a problem or injury occurs, you already have like that like library of information on how to deal with it.
Exactly. Yeah, and you kind of also get a better feeling for maybe why they're performing good or why they're performing bad on that day, you know, because you kind of you see the bigger picture a bit clearer than just a club setting or just a facility you're working at. And I think that's so important because um, sports is just such a small part that makes them who they are, you know? And there's so much
Mm,
influencing it that, I mean, you never really see the whole picture. You can't. Like, nobody gets it. Like, even with your friends, like, nobody really knows you, like, all of you, you know? Um, but yeah, seeing a bit of a bigger picture, it's important, you know? And it also helps,
100%.
I think, everybody, you know, because you always learn something with making new connections with people, no matter which
Yeah,
direction it's going.
like that's 100% like one of the reasons I started this podcast is like so more coaches can have like this free resource to watch and sort of get to know how different coaches run this industry. But it's also very selfishly for me. Like I love speaking to coaches and sort of getting to know their programs and how they go through it, their considerations, because like it makes me a better coach too. On terms of the athletes, I always like to ask their why. Like why are they working so much? Like why do they want to become great? Like why are they always trying to push for better?
Yeah,
And it's a very important because you kind of get like a rawness to them, and like then you can go back and forward with how you think about their performance.
yeah, absolutely agree. And I think it's also important for coaches to know their why, you know, because I think a lot of them are like a lot of coaches in the business, they just want it for the fame and for the money, you know. But there's only so little spots that will get you actually the fame and the money whatsoever. Um, and if your why is that, you're kind of losing like the connection to the people that will bring you there, you know. And the player knows that. Like, it
Mhm.
doesn't matter if they're academy or not. Like, if the player feels like you're using them for fame and money, there you lost them anyway. And then I have a feeling you're set to fail, kind of. You know,
100%.
I mean, it's only working
It's
for you.
this industry is unfortunately very ego driven, where we think that we made that person, and that's not fucking true at all.
No,
Like they're the ones that in the reps. They
yeah,
are the ones that ran. They're the ones that did everything.
yeah,
We just we just pushed them in the right direction,
yeah,
and it's a hard thing to come to terms with because you want to feel like you did something great with them. But I'll take football for an example. Like some of the best athletes, like football athletes in the world, probably don't do much strength and conditioning,
no,
right? And I've spoken to some coaches where they've let me into that program and how they dealt with some of the biggest clubs in the world, and there was next to none S&C actually involved in it, but they still managed to get to where they are.
yeah.
So how important are we in that factor?
Yeah, that's true. But I think, to be honest, if you're speaking about a certain like example of football, I think in football you get away with just the talent you have and the right mindset you have. If you
Mhm.
bring it on the pitch, it doesn't necessarily need strength and conditioning. Like with I think with strength and conditioning, and I know that sounds like very controversial, and maybe it's like call it unpopular opinion or not, but like you don't have to be the best athlete to be the best football player. Whereas in other
Mhm.
sports, if you, for example, if you take skiing, because like I have a strong skiing background, if you're not an athlete, you're gonna like barely make it down the hill alive, you know. And so I think it's like that's how kind of football has not the most funded or like most foundation in strength and conditioning, just because they didn't need it. Like it's just now that they realize, okay, it makes actually like a difference. Like you can make a difference in the team or whatsoever compared to to another team in the league. So now it's developing, but for a lot of years it just was like, yeah, it's a waste of time. Like you do your lap run, like you run your laps and you do like a bit of sprints and then you do like a little bit of plank and that's it. So that's interesting, but the
Yeah.
industry is definitely changing, and you see there's a lot of more effort getting put in that like in our field, which I think is absolutely important
Mhm.
because it just helps the players stay healthy for longer, and like be able to do the sport that they love so much with a for longer, because they are
Mhm.
like healthier,
I
they have
agree.
more like they build more resilience, I think, especially when like there's so
Mhm.
many new things coming in, like the Club World Cup or like so many games accumulated. You have to have a certain resilience. So I'm glad to see that it's now changing a bit, but it's still a long way to go, I think.
100% agree. And the thing, so like, I love speaking to soccer or football coaches because they are very unsung heroes in the past, right? So SSC wasn't big at all in football because it made you slow, it made you whatever. But now that's sort of changing. You can sort of see this new era of performance. So like, I think Ronaldo's big into his strength and conditioning. So I think like that sort of started changing the wave a little bit. From your experience, what was that like, sort of adopting strength and conditioning into football programs, and how was it when you started compared to now?
I mean, first of all, it's like an ever evolving process because I hope, like I think so at least, that I'm developing as a person or as a coach with every new team environment, with every new athlete that I'm getting, and that I'm having the honor of coaching, no matter which level, just because everybody helps me making new experiences as well, with just how they are, and how you have to adapt because a human being. There's not a copy. Like you don't find two of the
Mhm.
same kind. But yeah, like my coaching philosophy from like early on, and I had a really good mentor in my starting years of coaching. It was like stick to the basics and then develop from there. Because basically how I coach is like I have a maybe a variety of exercises, but they can all be broken down to like a squat pattern or like a deadlift pattern or just something like that, and then you just evolve. I think
Yeah,
was
like a
also,
squat hinge,
I'm sorry?
like a squat hinge, knee dominant, and push pull, vertical,
Exactly.
horizontal. Yeah,
Exactly. Because I also feel that I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to have a correlation, but I think that the basics they work for so many years with so many different athletes with so many different sports, and it's always going to come back. Like you maybe add like a little bit of a wobble board, but I'm not a fan of a wobble board. Like I never used it, and I probably never will. So it's just that everybody's doing the basic lifts, and then you just develop from there. But I think also
Mhm.
what's very important is that you don't necessarily have to have played a sport that you're coaching in, but you have to have a bit of an understanding of the sport. Like what's
Yeah,
influencing the sport, like why are they moving the way they're doing. Like for example, with football, like what does difference make when you have a ball, and if you don't have a ball, like how does it influence your cutting patterns or your sprint? Like how do you do a one-on-one? Like or with the goalkeeper work, like just get a bit of an understanding. You don't have to be the best, like the pro in it, but that's also very beneficial because that transfers to the weight room, because that like variety of like basic movements, they can be so adaptable as well to each sport because you can just change a bit of like the plane you're working in or the weight you use, the acceleration, deceleration, just like stuff like that, and that's always been like a bit of my like coaching style to just stick to that, and
yeah.
I believe that I've been doing well so far with that. So
I mean, I would say so if you're with the national team.
yeah, I mean, to be honest, like I also so got like lucky along the way as well. I met like great people who are super helpful to help me and are just being such a huge part in who I am and where I am as a coach. So I got lucky I'm there, but I probably also wouldn't be there if it was bad. I know that sounds a bit egoistic, but yeah.
No, that, so I was about to say you don't really get lucky in this industry. if people are connecting you to other places, it's because they've seen something in you that kind of reflects on your effectiveness to coach.
Yeah.
So I think every position, you've not been lucky, you've earned it in some way, shape, or form. And
Yeah.
that's it's hard, it's easier said than done, because I sometimes feel like I shouldn't be doing what I do, but then I get reminded like I've done this for a while.
Yeah, yeah, like that's the thing. Like, I think it's important also to stay a bit humble though, to know where you're coming from. Um,
100%.
but yeah,
100.
and to be honest, like that's why I'm like just enjoying it so much to also help and communicate with other coaches, because I know where I came from and I know what's the steps it took to get me where I am right now. And so I also want to be able to help other coaches in their way and just give them a bit of support because, to be honest, I think in our field there's so much like or so many people there that are not willing to help, and they're just kind of like have this, like you called it earlier, like an ego in like a negative way, and they're just like, oh, look at me,
Yeah.
like I'm ta ta ta. And you tend to like those are the ones that you see like coaching the top teams sometimes, and then you just be like, okay, I'm reaching out to that person. They're just gonna be like, yeah, I'm not replying or I'm saying no or like whatever. Like you heard everything. Like so
Mhm.
I think it's important for like coaches to have like a bit of a mentor, Like I'm not saying that I'm like a mentor, but I tend to like I like to give people a hand to help them grow as a coach as well, help the industry grow as well without cutting it from the top down, but kind of building up the bases, because the more good
Mhm.
coaches you have, the
No,
better
I
it is,
agree.
Yeah,
100%. Like I hate gatekeeping. Like if I have some information that, say, like if we were speaking and I have some information that you're having trouble with, I'm just going to tell you. I'm going to be like, yeah, this is what I do. This is how I found success. If it works for you, cool. If not, like let's adapt and change and see how it can work.
exactly.
But like, and this, like, I've been in this industry since I was 13. Like, I started S&C when I was 13 through a development program. When I was 14, I started coaching. I didn't know that this could be a career, so I just kind of like did something else and then found my way back. But I've reached out to so many coaches and so many people from like around the world. You get a lot of people just like either not replying or just straight being like, yeah, no, I can't help you. Sorry. And I'm just like, let's just fucking be helping each other.
Yeah,
Like, and I think this as well is like, if say we're at like the two biggest clubs in the same league, right? If me and you communicate back and forward, right? The competition is going to be like this,
yeah,
right? It won't be stagnant. So like if you're always winning and you're not like making any adjustments to make yourself better, it's always going you're going to stay stagnant. So for me, it's like if I'm here and I see a coach there, I'm going to speak to them and just like feedback some of the stuff that I'm doing. Maybe it can help, maybe it cannot.
yeah.
But at least we're like bringing up the field together, and I think that's where I sort of want to take this podcast is like make sure that great coaches come on so that the field can like grow together.
Yeah, exactly. I 100% agree with that. Yeah, and that's I think that's also like a bit of a beauty behind it, because you challenge each other, like you said, and the good coaches in a case of like humanity, I like no
Mhm.
humanity was or the wrong word I think, but like the human factor of it. I think that's what will like succeed in the end, And there's so many coaches willing there to help as well who are great coaches. So yeah.
Yeah, 100% agree. Did you sort of read any strength and conditioning manuals or anything or any book that sort of shaped a part of what you do and how you coach?
Oh, let me just think. I mean, aside from the usual one, what I think was absolutely helpful for me and like the way I'm communicating, it's called The Language of Coaching from Nick Winkelman. He's with I think he's Irish. It's a great one to read. Like it helps you a lot with like communication. And then again, the a resource from Ferguson Connolly. It's called Game Changer. It's just like a bit of a different, yeah, exactly that one. Um, and then the other one, like I said, Game Changer from Ferguson Connolly. But what I also always found very helpful is Altus. I'm not sure; it's not really well known in Europe. It's an U.S. performance institute founded by Dan Pfaff. It's got great online resources. It has a great mentorship program. Yep, exactly that one. And yeah, so that helped me so much because like I think one of the biggest steps I took in my career was during COVID, where everything was kind of online, and I did so much with them, and it was just helping me in like every way you can imagine as a coach. So yeah, go like those two books and Altus, and then networking, like, but in a good way, not in a
Networking, yeah.
wanting to bring yourself forward, but genuinely
Hmm.
wanting to communicate with people and like bring the industry forward and bring yourself and the other one forward as well.
Yeah. How much time do you try and like reach out to coaches and speak to different sort of people in this industry?
Oh god, that's a hard one. Like right now, it's a little bit less because I'm just taking a bit of time off, to focus on myself. Um, but during COVID, it was a lot. Like, I mean, everybody was on lockdown, so you just slide into everybody's DMs, and you just build a bit of a network. And then what's also important, like for me, is to stay in touch with those people. So a lot of them I'm
Mhm.
still regularly talking to, and we built a great understanding of each other and a great friendship in some ways. um but yeah, it's just, I don't know if I can really put like a time frame on it. Like if I see something on
Yeah.
like LinkedIn or something, you just type out like, hey, I like your work, etc. But I also spend some time just going to conferences as well. When you see something like that interests you, even if it's a bit off topic. So I actually went to an amazing conference by a players agency in Scandinavia just last week. It's called, well, the
Mm.
agency is called CMG. It's the first all female women's football. Like they coach just women's football play. Not coach. They have just women's football players under contract and coaches, and they host a like
Ah,
networking conference. And it's been the second time that I've been there, and it's just incredible because you meet so many people from football, but from all over the place. Like you meet like sometimes sports directors or people who have created an app to like help develop football, or one that's in a business market or whatever. So it's just a great way to do it. So everybody's check out Women's
yeah.
Football Expo by CMG. Highly recommend it.
I'll put that up as well. The thing is, like, the female S&C coaches are getting so much more recognition as well, which I think is awesome. Like, I always speak about Caroline Gagne, but she was at the University of Washington with me, and she's like in this very unique position where she does a lot of like S&C, but she also introduces it into like a more yoga setting as well. So like she's got the movement and fundamental of like effective movement and really breathing through everything. So like she's been used to like just like men only sports, and like being a female in that position can be a bit daunting. But if you just like stay in there for like, you can just do some really great work. And like I love Caroline because she's phenomenal.
Yeah.
But because of like this growing industry, how have you sort of found it from like as you went through this industry, being a female in S&C?
To be honest, like I mean, my sports coaching was mostly women's football. So just like I never really had like a negative experience with that, like we talk about like underlying sexism or whatever. So I really always got lucky with the stuff that I was working
Mm-hmm.
under. But I've heard like a few negative experiences as well of like men in power not being able to handle women in power as well. Like just the basic stuff like that. But for me, I think it's growing more into like knowing the value of a female coach within a team as well, and that's why I think there's
Mm-hmm.
more and more women's or like female coaches out there, because just that like emotional factor, but like in a positive way. I wouldn't say a man is not able to show emotions, but a female is just more approachable to being
A
more
bit hard to show emotion.
empathetic. Um, so I think that's also why a lot of female coaches are making the way into women into like men's sport or the men's side of sport. There's like a great one. Oh God, she's with a New York basketball team, if I'm not right, like NBA. Her name is Emily Sella. She's such an incredible coach. She was with the Nets before. I'm not sure if she's still with them. But like just to have them as like a leading figure is just it's incredible to see, and I'm glad that I get to have these role models as well. Of them like of the women killing it everywhere. Um, but yeah, there's still a long way to go because I mean the sector, yeah, exactly. The women's sector. Sorry, no, I lost my train of thoughts. Um,
That's a good. Sorry,
the
it was
the
my fault.
the women, no, don't worry. The women's sport is like it's about developing, but you have to have men in certain positions as well because you just don't have the number of women to do it, you know. And I think it's not about like man or female; it's about having the quality
Mhm.
to be right for the position. It doesn't matter like the gender, but you just don't have a lot of female with the right experience or with the proper experience yet, but it's getting there. So it's also important for women to support women to get there, or for also for men to support women to get there, you know, because that's all, again how
I agree.
everything is developing. But yeah, it's I like the way it's going. There's still a
No, like
yeah.
even with the podcast, I try and keep it very like 50-50. I've got just as many female coaches as I do male coaches, and I think it's good to celebrate what's happening in the field and not like what you were saying, not really care about genders. Because like we're at the end of the day, we're coaches. We can all get the same information and knowledge and speak to each other. So like this thing of being like a male only industry is kind of bullshit. So let's also recognize like some female coaches for what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like I've recently spoke to like Steph Mock,
Mm,
Bree Brown, and Lily. They're like phenomenal
yeah.
coaches. I'm about to have Missy Mitchell as well, and she's like they're all fucking fantastic coaches. And that, like some of the work that I've seen them do, like I've looked up to them for a while. So it's also good to like recognize that they're killing it, really.
Yeah. You could also check out, do you know White Line Performance on Instagram? Julia Irie.
I can pull it up. Julia,
Yeah, Irie is an
what's the
E.
last name?
Yeah, that's the last name. It's EYRE, like White Line Performance. Yep, you should reach out to her. Like she's, to be honest, like she's a good pal of mine as well. But she's such a rock star. To be honest, like she's one of the coaches and people that I admire most. Like she knows like her shit, and she's yeah. You should reach out to her, and she has a lot of stuff to
Cool.
say
I love that.
all the time.
Yeah, that's good. I
Yeah,
like that. No, but like the thing is, like what a lot of people don't realize is like most coaches or like most strength and conditioning coaches are type A people. Like if we have something to say, we will say it, and we don't really care much about who it hurts.
yeah,
But like it's also like going back to that ego thing. You also kind of need to check yourself sometimes. Like, is that something that's going to progress what we're actually talking about or trying to achieve?
yeah, definitely. Like ego is good, but like toxic ego, not so much. Because a good
Hundred
ego,
percent
like
agree.
it's always like brings competition with it as well, you know. Competition
Mm-hmm.
brings you forward or makes
Hundred
you
percent.
take a step in one way or the other.
I agree, and that's that whole thing I was saying. Like, we need to like to really make this industry fun. Everyone has to sort of be competing at their highest. Like, it's horrible to see like a team completely destroy someone else because they've got a good program all around. So why not like help out and just like bring the industry up? That's my feelings, anyways.
Yeah. I mean, it's also a very, very nice thought to have, but it's also a bit unrealistic right now, you know, because it's always
Yeah.
in competition. You always want the best for yourself or for the team you're working with, and you not necessarily care about the others when it comes hard on like
Mm.
back to back or but yeah, taking a little
I think
step,
that's more of a
it's a little
Yeah,
step progress.
I think that's more like I see it more in Europe where coaches are more reluctant to share information. I think right now we're sort of like trying to guard our jobs as best as we can so that we can have a job. Like in America, I've seen that they're more willing to share and to have a conversation or drop a call or like go back and forward with you than in Europe.
Yeah,
That's my feeling.
you might be right about that. I think a lot of it has to do with just the development of the industry itself, because right now you don't really have a lot of jobs in strength
Hmm.
and conditioning here. So it's kind of a Shark Tank where you fight for whoever gets out first, especially not a role that like pays your bills. You know, some people have to take on like 3 or 4 coaching jobs. So it's a hard battle, and that's what it makes people a bit more, yeah, egoistic,
When
but not egoistic. You know, kind of fight to survive. Whereas in the U.S., you have so much or so many options to do as well. You have the college level, you have high school level even, whereas in Europe you just don't have that much possibilities.
Hmm. What's your PR song when you're lifting?
My PR song, oh boy, a lot of people are just gonna judge me for that, but I basically listen to a very random mix of ABBA and sometimes a bit Taylor Swift in it. Depends,
Oh,
but yeah, I don't really have like if I PR lifting, I don't necessarily need like hard like heavy metal or something. Like me in the gym, I'm basically lifting and then just a bit like moving around, you know. So but I would say ABBA and then probably gimme gimme gimme.
nice.
Yeah.
What about like what's your conditioning playlist? Like if you're having a conditioning session, what playlist do you put on?
Um, God, you're asking me way too many things. No, just kidding. Um, Probably 80s rock,
Oh,
like good old, like Bon Jovi, Def Leppard. Is that Bruce Springsteen? Like, I really love Bruce Springsteen. I just have to have like a playlist that puts me in a good mood because, to be honest, I really, really don't like conditioning. So I just do like sprints, and if I do like a long distance, like a 5K or something, I literally dislike every step I'm gonna take. So I just need a good like music to like hum along, you know. But with sprinting, it's like 80s rock.
mm, nice.
Yeah.
What is some advice that you would give new strength and conditioning coaches or coaches wanting to come into this industry?
Don't be afraid to fail. Like everybody is gonna fail, especially in the beginning. You're gonna make a lot of mistakes. But it's not the end of the world. You know, like you're not gonna break someone just because you put too like not enough weight on it or on a bar or whatever, and then um find your why you coaching the way you coach, why you're actually there, like why do you want to become a coach, and then it's one step after the other. Like nobody's gonna go from like zero to hero in like one coaching job.
Mm,
It takes a while. It takes a lot of ups and downs. It takes a lot of setbacks. But if you have your why, the chances you're gonna make it are pretty high.
yeah, no, I agree. And I do like that. Don't be afraid to fail. I think a lot of people can have this sort of perfectionist mindset where they have to get everything right. But you actually probably learn more from your mistakes than you do by making things right.
Oh, 100%. And also, like, also, just don't be afraid to fail. Is kind of like you also will have people that you don't get along with. You know, they don't like you. You don't really like them. They're just it's a battle, but yeah, you and then you will gonna fail because it's just not gonna. It's not a match. You know, you won't necessarily have a match with everybody, and that's absolutely fine. Like,
Yeah, no, I agree. Thank you so much for coming on and spending some time with us.
thank you.
Is there somewhere people can reach out to you if they want to sort of pick your brain or go back and forward with you?
Yeah, sure. So, the easiest way is probably LinkedIn because I am tending to keep my social media private. So, my LinkedIn is just Lorena Sumser. You can also reach out on X. It's the same, um, how do you say, the same name. But yeah,
Username, yeah.
just drop me a message. I'll be happy to reach out. And yeah, thank you for having me on a podcast.
Yeah, no worries. Peace.